go. Hello, Martin. How are you?
Hi, Cherry. I'm doing great. What about you?
Very good. We're talking about a topic that I think it's on everyone's mind, AI and experience. In light of our newest report, Designing AI Native Experiences. I mean, you and I talk every day, but for those who don't know you, please, can you give us a very quick introduction of who you are and what you do at Star?
Yes, sure. So I'm Martin Fix. I'm located in Germany in the Munich region, which is the southeast corner. Um, I'm working as a technology director, and also I'm co-heading our AI Innovation Hub, which is basically centered around everything we do about AI, which whether this is customer facing or it's our internal initiatives. I'm a computer scientist by education, so I'm the tech guy. I
Mhm.
spent more than 25 years on the other side of the fence in the industry. And now, since 5 years, I'm working with Star. And in the role as technology director, I'm basically bridging the gap between the business perspective and the technology perspective.
Amazing. And I think that really came across when we interviewed you for this report, because you really brought in a very unique lens about how AI is really not only changing the way we experience software solutions, but really what does that mean under the hood. So let's zoom out before we zoom in. Let's start with establishing almost a ground of knowledge, and understanding what we mean by AI is really fundamentally changing experience design today. So tell everyone, like, in how do you define AI native experience, and why do you think this particular moment in time it's quite different from some of the previous transformation we've experienced, such as automation and personalization when it comes to experience?
Yeah, I think if I would try to explain this AI native in simple words, it's just flipping around the paradigm. So in the past, we have been doing things as humans and having AI filling in some smaller pieces. And the question was, where can AI help me to get this done? In AI native, it's the other way around. It's where do I still need a human to guide the AI? So the thinking is that the core assumption is everything is done by AI, and there's only very few interactions, um, gates, guardrail points where humans need to interact. And if you think this way, you have to approach it also in a completely different way. So you have to basically make sure AI understands and knows what to do, when to do, how to do. So you're describing more the approach than the solution. And you're describing the approach in a very universal, generic way, because you don't want to describe it every time again you have a new problem. So it's a complete switch of mindset. You're getting away from the actual solution you're looking for towards how would I guide someone or a system or an AI to be able to derive the solution. So it's basically you're switching from the implementation seat to a teacher position, so to say, a teacher or a mentor. And this makes it fundamentally different because AI is extremely universal in solving all these things, but it's only as good as you guide it. Now, these
Mm.
models are getting better, that's no question. But still, every now and then, they may take a wrong turn, or they need a little bit more guidance to get faster to the solution point. And then at the end, you have a pair. You have this kind of, it's called a guidance framework, or the modern term is called AI harness, which defines how all this fits together. And you have an intention. What's your intent? I want to have a solution for the problem X, Y, Z. And then you describe the problem and not how the solution should look like. And the rest is done by AI.
That's we will dive a bit more further into what really happens when AI is interpreting intent, because that is my understanding really different from more of a linear way. But before we do that, I know in the report, we talked about we're sort of in a current era of chat, but we're also at the end of the chat era because we know as start that chat will not be enough. for the agentic world. Why is that? And also, what do you think the next generation of machine human interaction will need to look like?
Let me start with a small disagreement. I don't think we will be beyond chat very
Okay.
soon. I think that how we use the chat and what the content of chatting is will change. And I'm coming from the perspective that when humans interact, what do? We chat
Yeah. We
because
exchange.
because
Yeah.
voice language is the most efficient way to transfer information. This will remain also with AI. But what will change is we might get away from typing to voicing. So
Mm.
voice recognition is already well established, and the system will also talk back to me. And we will get away from I communicate something and I get a communication back in terms of language. I will foresee that I show something or explain, and the system will explain or show me something. So it's not like you write what is x plus y, and it will give me a print and says 5, or for more complex things, it will then actually create the solution and demonstrate it. That's a different. It will no longer describe the solution, it will build and demonstrate it and show it to me. So I think chat will still be the initial trigger, but then what I get back is not necessarily only text or spoken word. It could be a solution, a visual, a tool, a system, whatever.
So you're saying then, if I understood you correctly, we will still continue to exchange with AI, but it will go very much beyond text and probably beyond what we could imagine that exchange could look like because AI is accelerating so fast. And even the solution we see will go beyond like the static, what we think a solution is, beyond like an interface. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, as long as we stick to the human interaction patterns like voice, visual, gestures, maybe even haptical,
Mm,
um, it will be this way. But it will turn from ping pong messaging into an actual conversation, like what you and I are currently doing. You can do already, and it will be even more sophisticated in the future when you talk to things. I'm not sure if
mm.
it's allowed to reference this, but there is famous American movies from futuristic scenarios, and there's one system called Jarvis. You know,
Yes, of course.
this is what's going to be. And
Mhm.
the next step of evolution is bridging the gap between virtual and physical world. So in the future, we will have AI systems which have any kind of manifestation to touch physical things in the real world, like robotics, any kind of thing which can touch and do things. And then the ultimate step, which is already being researched at, is like you have non-verbal interaction with systems like brain interfaces, these kind of things. But I think this is very far out
We
future.
won't go there for now. We won't go
Yeah.
there for now. And for those who don't know, guys, Jarvis from Iron Man, so please go watch. It's a uh, great movie. There are a few of them. In our report, Martin, you said that we are now seeing a shift between interface design to relationship design from really a technology building perspective, which is what we do here at Star. What does that really mean in practice for those who are leading product design, who are leading enterprise technology design, who are maybe even leading brand experience design? Just like dive a little bit deeper in practice. What do we mean as Star relationship design when it comes to AI experience?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. So up until now, there was a logical, let's say, an economic barrier on developing solutions or apps or tools, which is that you can't afford to make it fit every single individual person. So you have a user interface design philosophy. It's based on mostly on personas. So what is the most common use case? What most people need? It's based on statistics, like on a distribution curve, and you want to hit the maximum of the distribution so that the maximum amount of people are happy with how your application works. And from there, it's mostly static. There usually are some configuration options a little bit, how it flows, but it's not really very flexible. The basic principles are imprinted into how the software has been built. This barrier is now removed with AI. As AI allows you to tailor a user interface experience in real time, live, for each individual person at the time when it's needed. I think this is the fundamental shift. So what does it mean for product management? You're no longer researching what does the market want, what is the majority, what is the distribution curve, what are my personas? I think you need to start to research what is the feeling I want to have when I use this app, and how do I do this? How is a personal emotional experience driven by interaction patterns? And once you understand this, you can use AI to always apply them in the proper way to fit each individual person, which basically means, in reality, it could mean that an application looks completely different between me and my wife. Even it's the
Mm.
same application, we want to do the same things, but it's used and it feels very, very different because we're very different persons.
Yeah. Does that mean finally we do have the technology to truly deliver personalization at scale? It's not just you get, a tailored email message. The entire experience end to end can truly finally be tailored to Martin and your needs and your desires and preferences.
Yeah, ultimately, yes. And to stick with your example, it would even mean that the solution will respect my favorite way of communication, whether this is email, whether this is WhatsApp, Threema, Meta, you name it. It will just know which fits best to me and will use this.
Yeah. It's quite interesting that, we live in a big data AI very technology driven world, and the first thing you point out is feeling. You said you used the word feeling, like how would this application make the end user feel? So it sounds like that human centered, emotion driven way of not design in the traditional sense, but orchestrating what an experience is still really important, because at the end, if I'm understanding you or interpreting you correctly, that AI is still only a vehicle, or what a vehicle to build that human connection. It's just now we use this really advanced technology. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I agree. So as long as any human is involved, interaction is always mainly emotional. This is how we are function as organisms.
Hmm.
And the more you have an emotional fit, the happier that your customer slash user is going to be. Now, the caveat is here, what fits me best emotional changes within a day, within an hour, over the years, over the months. Humans are only partly predictable, so to say. Um, and this is why one day you like an application, next day you hate it. Having these
Hmm.
fast adaptation cycles will help us. But there's another thing. I might believe that in the future, the current amount of interactions between humans and technical systems will reduce. Why? Because AI will take over certain things which are just annoying and no value add for humans at the moment, but you have to do it because there's no better solution. And these agents will start interact with other agents, other systems, and take this away from humans. So I would say that the overall amount of communication might reduce and will shift from human to machine to machine to machine. And when you reach this point, machine to machine interaction follows completely different patterns. There is no emotion in machine to machine.
So much to unpack there. Can I start with the first point that I want to unpack? Because you said, well, we're talking about human interest and human emotions. When AI is interpreting, well, starting to interpret intent in a way, our emotions and how we're feeling, we're really um, communicating beyond just words. And that means AIs will inevitably start making decisions on our behalf. What does it really take from a system design perspective to keep human in control and always make sure the machines have humans' best interests?
Yeah. How many hours do we have to unpack this?
Well, for anyone who want to hear more, you can contact Martin and contact Start. But give us the headlines, so because I think that's a really important conversation for business leaders, regulator, like who at the end of the day can make sure AI is very much performing for human.
Yeah. So I would like to touch a couple of perspectives here. One, being in control is a very subjective term. Every person has a very different understanding what being in control means. There are these stories told Germans want to micromanage everything and Americans give a shit about anything, right? I don't know, it's not true, but every person has a different understanding of what control means. And then there is regulations/compliance, which are hard requirements which define what has to be in place. And the third component, which is important to understand, is trust. When I trust someone, I feel I need to do less control or to be in less control compared to a person or tool I'm not trusting. And trust is built over time, and it's an emotional thing again. Trust is built like you scoring credits. You request an action, you see how the action performs, you see the result, you're happy, you get a tiny little bit more trust into this. If you repeat this multiple times, you build up a stack of trust, and then you let control slip a little bit in the positive sense. So, but generally speaking, control can be reflected in the following things. One is transparency, meaning you can always reproduce and understand what was happening. Not necessarily on the deep technical level. You don't have to read log files or something like this, but you always see what decision was made, when, for what reasons, what other option had been explored, what has been discarded, what has been approved from you, and what was the decision of the system. That's
Mm.
one dimension. The other dimension is limited delegation. You can decide to which extent the system can make decision on your behalf, and these boundaries can be adjusted at any point of time to your needs. Some days you think, I'll just let it go, it's not risky. Some days you have very delicate things to handle and you want to remove the autonomy of the system. And last but not least is the ability to interrupt. So if something is happening, you should be able to stop it if you see it's going in the wrong direction. And you should be able to stop it in an instant, not calling a support hotline or chatting to a bot and waiting hours and blah, blah, blah. No, it must be kind of like a stop command, right? Stop right there.
Mm.
Um,
Do you do you think, Martin, the future of trust, do you think that's going to build on still the brand itself, its values and how it shows up in the market? Or do you think it's built on how the AI or the agent um, behaves, interacts with the end user? Or do you think it's really that ongoing process between the human and AI? And as long as that process is all the things you said, transparent, um, traceable, then you maintain almost like a motion of trust.
hard to say. My current prediction would be that there are people who trust everything which comes from specific brands because the brand has a certain image and they feel this is reflecting what they need. So I would say there are people who trust Apple blindly. When they use their iPhone, they trust everything is safe, no data will be stolen, I can recover it, blah, blah. It's just, again, it's a subjective emotional understanding of products or services from a specific brand, which are influenced actually by marketing campaigns, by reports they have from people they trust. Like if you tell me, look, I use an iPhone and I had a problem, it's all good. And I can't say, well, I use Android. I never had a problem, it's all good. So, and last but not least, personal experience. And honestly, this whole mechanism, I think it will not change. This is what we do today already. Like if you buy a BMW car, you have certain expectations on quality and breakdown reliability and this. You trust the brand, it's going to be a great car. Now, if BMW would be to release an agent, a mobility agent, you would just trust it in advance because you trust the brand. But then the personal experience with the app kicks in. And if this is not what you want, your trust goes down. First to the service or the product, and maybe later to the brand as well. It will reflect.
Mm.
And this is how brands rise and this is how brands fall. I think this will not change in the era of AI, as long as it comes to the human, because the mechanism of building trust and the emotional connection is still the same.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think trust from a brand perspective is a process. You have to make sure every single touch point is consistently representing the value and the purpose that your brand promises, and that consistency is critical. You have outlined a set of principles that companies and business leaders can follow in the report, a set of human agentic interaction principles. I do encourage everyone to read the report. Martin, you we don't have time for you to go through every single one of them, but give us, let's say, the top 2 to 3 principles that you believe are imperative for business and technology leaders today to exercise and make sure um, when they are creating these AI native experiences and products and solutions, they are very much putting, their end users' interests uh, at the forefront, but also making sure the way they design the system is actually enabling that.
Yeah, I think we touched on the core principles already, which is transparency, limited delegation, the ability to stop. We have the legal, regulatory, and compliant aspect, which needs to be considered. And one thing we didn't touch yet is, I would call it ethics or morality. And this is a very interesting / challenging topic, as ethics is driven by your social society. It's not global and it's not unique across the world. Something which is deemed totally acceptable in Middle Europe might be totally unacceptable in Eastern Asia or in North America or South America. So you have to reflect the needs of society or the user groups, which are going to be your key users in this area. And the task for leaders is to first accept that these are important guidelines, accept that this human agentic interface manifest or model is something you believe in. It's a cultural thing. You first have to build the mindset. Once you're convinced that this or flavors of it, you have to make sure the organization understands it as well and it's implemented deeply in the minds of the people. Only when it's sitting there, it will transition into the application. If you enforce this by requirements and stories and epics and you name it, you will create a hollow or even a shallow product where it's not really down to the core of it. It needs to be built from the ground up, from the very early stages. It's kind of the DNA of your solution. You can bring in certain aspects at a later point of time, but it requires a cultural shift and it makes maybe the product look a little bit clunky and wonky. If all of a sudden it has features or things to be done which never have been designed to be in there.
Mm. It's it seems to me that again, we're really experiencing a fast changing technology. Some of the traditional good business practices, qualities still remain, empathy for the end user, whoever they may be and whatever the circumstances they may be. It's still a core, probably the starting point to build a good solution, whatever the technology as the enabler may be. Um, Back to the previous question we're talking about, you use the word machine to machine interaction. In the report, we use agentic e-commerce as an example to manifest, well, to show, what this machine to machine interaction could look like, but also, I would say more importantly, how is that really going to change, business practices? So let's stay with this agentic e-commerce as an example as AI becoming almost a new layer between brands and consumers, what do you believe are things that business leaders need to really reimagine now to make sure that their brands stay relevant in the future?
Yeah. So I think the key thing is to be ready that it changes. So AI is not going to disappear anymore. It's going to stay and it's going to change. And you have to understand what is the possible impact. And when we come specifically to agentic era e-commerce, the vision I have is that the way to find matching services or products for a person is going to be very different. An agent on my behalf will scan the whole internet, every source, and try to figure out what is the best match for my current intention. And these agents, as I said, they don't have emotions, they don't have feelings, they're based on algorithms, on mathematics, on statistics, basically. So the game to convince an agent to prefer your brand, your product, your solution is completely different. It's no longer about emotions. It's no longer about feelings. It's about technology and data. It's a
Mm,
fundamental shift. So what brands need to understand is you're going to win this game by having the best technology and the best data and your own best agents in place, not your best marketing campaign.
mm,
This means you're shifting from providing content and convincing people to providing agents, data, and machine interaction and negotiations. That also means you need to have a very clear focus on how do you represent your brand in data, in machine processable data? How do you bake this in? And then secondly, how do you want to represent your brand with an agent? What should be the behavior? What should be the acting? And how do you safeguard it? You have to remember, always remind yourself that when you use agents which represent your brand, they could be exploited.
mm.
They could accidentally disclose information you don't want to have. They could go rogue. There was this famous example, I think 1.5 years ago, where a very early version of an AI agent was tricked into selling flight tickets for just $10. Right? So there was a chatbot, somebody was interacting with it, and it was convincing the chatbot, so a human was convincing the chatbot to sell him a ticket of first class around the world for about $10. And he agreed to
It
the
worked.
deal.
Yeah.
The airline refused to provide the ticket, but lost in court.
That's amazing.
So these kind of
Yeah.
things you need to safeguard, right? And again, that means brands which are producing physical things like shoes, clothes, grocery, whatever, need to get extremely strong in the tech game now, or find partners who are extremely strong on this tech game. And this goes far beyond the traditional IT business backbone infrastructure, like running your CRM, ERP, whatever. This is a different kind of game. It's
Mm,
really fast paced. You need to be highly, highly adaptive. You need to scale out pretty fast. And then there's also a very visionary challenge, because at the moment, the knowledge for searches is the web, right? It's websites. Brands are presenting websites which have content, which reflect give visuals reflecting the brand style, etc. So your whole image of a brand is formed by websites. If you think this through in the agentic era, you don't need websites
Mm.
because nobody's going to look at them. The agent is going to have technical communication. Why would I, as a human, still look at a website? What I want is that the agent shows me a picture of the product it has shortlisted. But that's not a website. I want to see it in my device directly. So the question then is, where can you find brands in the future? Is there going to be kind of a registry? Is there going to be lookup lists? Will there be quote unquote brand crawlers? So will Google switch from crawling websites to databases? I don't have the answer, but this is definitely a future problem that brands
Yeah.
also have to deal with. How do they make themselves known to agents?
Yeah. I think for those who are listening, the point we're trying to make here is just how complex and how many different layers are this, right? If we use healthcare as an example, probably the how we design the experience and the implication will be very different. I think if I'm hearing or summarizing some of the key points you made, Martin, when companies are designing AI native experiences, emotions, empathy for the end user is really, really critical because at the end of the day, it's a human receiving that or experiencing it. However, when it comes to machine interaction, which clearly, as you outlined, extremely relevant and critical for brands who are selling product and services to stay relevant, that data and technology infrastructure is imperative. It's like you cannot survive, you cannot not run a business moving forward if, I don't know, your product's not encoded in the right way for agents to find it. But then once the agent find the or a person's agent finds it, it still needs to deliver a uh, personalized experience, maybe for the end consumer to still want to buy it because a brand still needs to create that emotional engagement. So it's a very complex thing to really think about.
Yeah, and allow me just to add to
Of
what you
course.
just said. I think a brand will not be able to send an emotional fitting message. The reason is that the receiver is still not the human, it's the agent between. So
Mm,
the emotional part comes in from your personal agent to yourself.
right.
So what brands need to learn is, how do I guide the user agent to bring across the right emotion I want to send? It's an
Mm,
indirection. It's like if I tell you, Cherry, please convince your husband to buy these pairs of shoes from me. I completely depend on you, how you bring across the message. And I can tell you 1,000 things to consider. You will still make your own decision how to go about it.
mm, That's a really interesting point. So once the brand communicates to an agent with product information, there's a layer of, if you want to do this right, convincing the consumer's agent that all the additional values or emotions or different dynamics that we are the best. Therefore, for your customer, for this person, we are the better choice for you. Well, out of this complexity, Martin, before we end this conversation, because we could go on for hours, what can Star do for brands who are navigating the future of experience in the agentic era? How can we help them?
So, of course, we can help on the technical level, right? We can build these agents. We can build the surrounding infrastructure which is needed. We can help to set up, cure, and cleanse the data you need. Bring it together, what you have, and maybe scattered or distributed sources into a way, make it accessible to an agentic layer to represent the brand. We can also help the brands on the more, let's say, strategic level of how to go about an AI native user customer facing experience. what could it look like? What is a feasible AI representation of your brand? Does it even make sense? And the underlying question is also, should your products actually go in the direction of AI native, or does it make sense to stay as they are for a while? Because not everything might be applicable. Not every user might want AI native stuff. It comes back to trust. And then, of course, there's a lot of still products and services which are even not applicable to an AI first experience, like a grocery store. Or if you have a paper mill, or so if you're producing physical goods in the real world, AI native might have a different flavor to be applied in the experience. Maybe it's on the decision making, on the buying decision, but not on the actual product. A brick of mortar does not have any AI component. It just sits in the wall. Um, then you have digital services, and here we can help quite a lot. We are very strong on understanding user needs, figuring out user needs. Um, what is the transition between enabling an existing solution and put some AI on top of it, or make it actually feel AI native?
Mm. Okay, good. We will link the report in the comment. So really do hope everyone can give it a read and let us know what you think. Of course, this is a fast moving topic. We will definitely keep everyone up to date with our latest thinking. So Martin, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having the opportunity to discuss about this.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
Yeah, have
Thanks.
a good one.